I asked about this.
But the rest of the country is gorgeous.
We'll call the meeting to order. This is the New Garden Township Board of Supervisors meeting, June 16th, 2025. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss litigation. If anybody has any public comment, Michael, I have yours. If anybody else has it, if they can fill out the yellow slip, I have Patricia also. Great. So the first we'll have public comment, 3-minute time limit. This is for non-agenda items, and then we'll follow that up with public comment for agenda items.
That is correct. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. My name is Patricia Barbera. I'm at Brittany Hills, and I'm here to discuss the proposed amendment that you guys passed at last month for the stadium arena for the land use at White Clay Point. We understand, and a lot of us have been arriving at different meetings expressing our discontent and our unwillingness to have that amendment and that land use go through. You guys tabled that amendment in February because you understood that we did not want a stadium in our area, and we have continued to arrive at each and every meeting. So our question is this: why did you pass that amendment last month when we have clearly stated we do not want something like that? We would like to set the character for our township, and we are disappointed that this board has done that. We understand that we need more revenue in our township. We don't understand why money has been spent on feasibility studies, on stadium complexes that are unnecessary, and rezoning that we feel is a waste of our money. And once again, I mean, we just are very disappointed that you're not hearing the wishes of the township, that we don't want any kind of an amendment that would allow for that kind of land use, because then it becomes that much more difficult when a developer does come along and wants to put in a stadium. So once again, you know, we've been coming every single month, and I hope that you hear me this time on behalf of so many of the individuals in this township that we don't want that as a land use. I brought something for a handout if that's what you need in order to remember the wishes and the rights of the people of this community to set the character of our own community.
Thank you. Michael, do you want to speak?
Good evening, everybody. Give you a little bit of backstory. Tonight, you've got on your agenda discussion.
Just real quick, name and address for the
Hi.
record. Thank you.
Michael Lowenstein. I'm Vice President of the Pemberton HOA Board. So again, tonight you've got as an agenda item, discussion about the potential for an ordinance for no solicitation. So the backstory from Pemberton's perspective, and the reason I think that this is on the agenda, as Chris will attest, is Saturday a week ago, we had somebody from an organization called Green Pest at Pemberton. Their model apparently for selling is that they had somebody on site earlier doing some service work. And after that service work was done, a salesperson turned up, started soliciting door to door, telling the owners that not necessarily saying that this was at the recommendation of the owner who'd had the service, but recognizing that this owner had had service work done. When he showed up at my door, I said, "We are posted as no solicitation. We're a private community. Please leave." He wouldn't. He stayed at Pemberton for close to 3 hours. I kind of tracked him around what was going on within the community. The woman who'd had the service work done actually joined me at the top of the cul-de-sac on Kestrel Court. And we confronted him and he said, "Oh no, I have a license and an approval from New Garden Township and I paid $300 for it." Well, my wife is from Brooklyn. She called the police. She wasn't taking any prisoners. Multiple people told him he shouldn't be on the property, and he simply would not leave. He canvassed the entire 86 units at Pemberton. When the police arrived, they told him, "No, you're not allowed to be here. Don't come back. If you come back, you will be cited." In the meantime, what we experienced is a lot of fear and concern. You know, we've got some elderly people within the community. We've got a number of single women within the community. They were very concerned about this individual knocking on their door, uninvited, despite being told multiple times that, again, posted no solicitation, please leave. One of the things that the patrolman who was there asking this individual to leave and informing him that he was going to be cited if he showed up again, he told us that this issue of solicitation is a concern, not only in New Garden, but a number of the surrounding communities as well. All of this prompted me to write a letter to Chris, and here we are, and I hope you start looking at this favorably. I don't know what can be done with regard to enforcement. It's a big issue and it's a big concern. I can only tell you that of 86 owners that we have at Pemberton, probably 10 of them, including all the board members, confronted this individual. I mean, we were concerned obviously for our own personal safety. We didn't know what he'd do, but we asked him to leave and we felt we had the right to do that. Any questions? That's all I have to say really before you get into your discussion later this evening.
No, thank you. I would have to agree with you. In a number of years I've been supervisor, other than traffic, the solicitation has been a very large topic, and it's not widely agreed upon that we should have a permit and allow it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Steve. One of the things that the patrolman said is that it's a growing issue. Now, obviously, the police department covers a number of communities, and he was going not just based on New Garden Township, but what he's seen in a number of adjoining communities. So, you know, again, just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. Hope you will act on it favorably. We think it's important, and, you know, we're concerned obviously about everybody's safety and everybody's comfort, and, you know, not having to have this as an issue. That's it. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
This month, we don't have any public hearing or recognitions. Next item is presentations, the Act 209 presentation, which is in the board materials.
Hey, John, you want to come off mute?
Can you hear me okay, Chris?
Yeah, and just make sure, because whenever we kind of have people live over our Zoom feed here, it comes through our little projector thing that's kind of weak. So just like I said, I don't know if your family's aware that you're briefing in your home remotely. That
Okay.
if you can shout, that'd be great.
Oh, sure.
And I will share my screen and go ahead and get started.
Okay. Am I going to advance, or do I have control, or are you going to advance?
I can advance over. Just let me know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for making some time on the agenda tonight. I just have a quick overview and update on the Act 209 study, which we are completing in order to identify the transportation impact fee for new development within the township. Next slide. So we've been working through the process. It's basically a three-step process. in order to identify what the traffic impact fee will be. And then the last step will be adopting the actual traffic impact fee ordinance. Our first step was completed earlier this spring. We completed the land use assumptions report, and it was adopted by the board. That helped us identify our development projections within the township and an identified service area, which I'll cover shortly. Basically what we focused on was a 10-year build-out projection or estimate. From that development estimate, we complete basically a township-wide traffic study, which is called the roadway sufficiency analysis. And in that, that helps us identify what traffic and transportation improvements are needed for capacity to serve future development. It also identifies pre-development needs within the township and at the identified study intersections. And then from that study, we figure out how much those improvements cost, who's responsible for them based on the laws of the Act 209 legislation. It can be divided between township responsibility, PennDOT responsibility, others in certain situations that could be, approved development or the county in some instances, as well as development. And then, as I said, we'll calculate the traffic impact fee for the new development in the service area. Next slide. So just and kind of go down the list. We've completed the land use assumptions report. Schedule-wise, we're looking at a public hearing at the July Board of Supervisors meeting, where we'll present in a little bit more detail the findings of the roadway sufficiency analysis and capital improvement plan and what our recommended traffic impact fee will be. I'll give you a little preview tonight in just a couple minutes. And then if the board adopts that in July, then we will adopt the traffic impact fee ordinance in August at that board meeting. Next slide, Chris. So just some of the highlights of those steps and those processes and studies. In the land use assumptions report, we projected 442 residential units and about 2.8 million square feet of non-residential build out within the township. That would equate to about 2,000 peak hour trips spread throughout the township and almost 3,400 PM peak hour trips. We do have to identify a transportation service area, which I'll show you in a map in just a few minutes, but Act 209 only allows us to evaluate a 7 square mile service area. So there was enough of the township that was developed that we didn't feel would redevelop as easily. So instead of creating 2 service areas, and it's a little bit more tedious in terms of the study, and then you wind up with 2 different traffic impact fees that you have to administer. We decided to just block out some of that area in the township that we believed would not redevelop or have significant development in the future. We did identify 26 study intersections in the transportation service area. So our traffic study evaluated and identified needed improvements at over 24 locations within the township. One thing we have to do is identify a preferred level of service. So in terms of capacity, if you've heard presentations on traffic studies before, level of service is basically a grade for how a intersection is performing in terms of delay. So typically level of service D is considered acceptable by PennDOT. There is still capacity. When you get to level of service E, things start to break down a little bit. And then you find out that, as you get to a failing level of service, you get saturation in your traffic network and your overcapacity. So working with the committee, we did identify a preferred level service of D for the study intersections and for individual movements. And the one thing with preferred level service is before we get to the future development condition, the township and or PennDOT has to bring all of the intersections up to that preferred level service before we start evaluating the development's impact and what's going to go into their traffic impact fee. So we don't want to set it too high, or we'll wind up with a lot of burden on the township, as well as potentially improvements that just are not feasible. They're kind of out of scope and out of character with the township. So running through the analysis, we felt like level service D was the appropriate selection. And that's fairly common for Act 209s as well. Sometimes even you get level service E in some townships based on how much traffic they have. So I think everybody was comfortable with the level of service D. And then that all leads into the transportation capital improvement plan that I was mentioning. And we evaluate existing conditions, what's happening today, what improvements are needed today to achieve that preferred level of service. And then in the future, what we call pass-through conditions. So that's 10 years basically build out, and it's traffic that's generated from outside of the transportation service area, or outside of the township. That's not development traffic. That's not subject to the traffic impact fee. So that's future pass-through conditions. And then from the land use assumptions report, that development projections, those projections are then added to the network, and we figure out what the impacts are of future development within the transportation service area, and we calculate the impact fee. Next slide, Chris. And if you can't hear me, just let me know and I'll speak louder. But basically, this is a map of the transportation service area. The study intersections are highlighted with the blue dots. Again, we have about 26. We have 26 study intersections. They are generally working with the township and the committee. They are generally within kind of where we anticipate the most development or redevelopment occurring within the township, along Route 41, Newark Road, Baltimore Pike, and up near the Route 1 interchange. And again, that's just under 7 square miles. And a lot of the area below the service area, kind of down towards the state line in London, Britain, that area does not have a lot of sewer service. So, that is usually an area that does not see a lot of development growth when we are doing our Act 209 studies. Next slide, Chris. So we have here a results of our capacity analysis at the 26 study intersections. We have this for existing conditions, future pass-through conditions, and future development conditions. And each time we proceed from existing to pass-through to development, we layer on the improvements. So this is basically the composite. This is the final result. And it shows improvements that are planned by PennDOT, improvements that are that we have identified under existing conditions that are needed to meet the preferred level of service, as well as the future pass-through conditions. So existing are shown in green, and then pass-through conditions are shown in blue. And then in yellow, we show what's needed ultimately with all the development projected within the township. So there's a combination of roundabouts, turn lanes, traffic signals, additional through lanes in some instances on Route 41. And basically, we've reviewed this with the Traffic Impact Fee Committee, and they made their recommendation that they agreed with these improvements. I would note that we did look at we did consider roundabouts at some additional intersections where they're not recommended here on this figure. Why we chose not to move forward with that recommendation is um, a couple of different reasons: topography, property impacts. A lot of instances you needed multi-lane roundabouts. A single lane roundabout would not work, and the cost of the improvements were significantly higher than the traditional traffic signal and lane improvements. And to add that to a traffic impact fee would have significantly raised the impact fee, and probably some developers may challenge the fee at that point. So we felt that this improvement plan had wound up with a reasonable traffic impact fee. And that's not to say when the township goes to move forward with a project, they could not pivot in some locations and further consider a roundabout. But for the purposes of the traffic impact fee, we haven't recommended all those roundabouts just yet. So Chris, next slide. So as I was saying, we broke down costs, and we also provided schedules for improvements, as well as the allocation of who was responsible for what. And that's all broken down and spelled out and dictated by the Act 209 legislation. But in a nutshell, the capital improvement plan for the existing conditions is roughly 1.2 million. And based on the allocations on state roads and township roads, the township is about 850,000 on the hook for those improvements, and PennDOT will be responsible for the remainder. Next slide, Chris. And I'm not going to go through all the improvements in detail. If that's this report, both reports are available for public review. And then we'll have the public hearing next month, so we can get into those in more detail if need be. So next slide. Yep. So the future pass-through capital improvement plan gets higher as there were more improvements necessary. So that is just over 25 million total. And then there's a breakdown of roughly 4 million for the township, and PennDOT will be responsible for the additional. That also includes planned improvements for the roundabouts up at the Route 1 interchanges on Newark Road, both ramp intersections. So, and you can see that most improvements are scheduled to 2035, where there's a PennDOT improvement in the schedule. There is a probably 2030, I think, was the scheduled year that we included, and that was based more on that PennDOT schedule. And the reason why we set out every improvement to 2035 is give the township the most flexibility to collect impact fees and bring projects forward. Technically, the township needs to spend the impact fees within 3 years of the scheduled completion, unless the capital improvement plan gets updated. So we will probably revisit this in a few years, and update costs, update schedules, and update the fee. So there really won't be we won't give the township an opportunity to kind of miss and kind of go over schedule. So we'll keep on this and keep everything up to date. And then also in here is the Baltimore Pike Newark Road project that is also being funded by PennDOT as well. So I forgot to mention that. Next slide, Chris. And then we have the future development program, and the font gets real small because there's a lot of improvements. But basically, we are at 25 million, or I'm sorry, 32 million in total costs for the improvements. And then roughly 12 million of that, or 12.5 million almost, is attributed to new development traffic. The township does not have a responsibility in this condition, but there is some allocations to PennDOT as well as to some improvements that we are basically providing for consistency, which may fall on the township in the long run. It may go to PennDOT, but for example, like Route 41, there are a couple intersections that required two through lanes in a direction at two different points. Chris, if you can go back to the level of service figure. So on Route 41, you can see we have a couple arrows hatched in yellow. So basically, those are improvements where not necessarily needed for capacity, but we are recommending for consistency of the cross section. So if you're heading eastbound on Route 41, you can see that we need a double left coming off of Newark Road to turn onto Route 41 south or east. And then we have two through lanes also picking up at that intersection and carrying to the south or east. We don't necessarily need them at New Garden Road, but then we do need them again at Star Road for capacity. So we're recommending that cross section. So those don't necessarily fall on the developer or within the traffic impact fee. So those are called out separately. So just wanted to point that out. We're trying to be fair with the traffic impact fee allocations, but also provide a consistent improvement for the township and Route 41. So if we can go back to table 3, Chris, sorry for jumping around. So again, the 32 million and then the 12.5 million or 12,489,333, that is the number that's going to get plugged into the traffic impact fee calculation. If you go to the next slide, Chris. So you can see the calculation, the equation, the 12, and it's slightly different from what's in the table because we did allocate a small portion of the roadway sufficiency analysis cost to prepare the study into that impact fee calculation because the law does allow that. So it gets bumped up slightly. So it's still almost 12.5. It's about a $10,000 increase. And then earlier on, I said there were about 3,400 trips that are generated by new development within the service area during the PM peak hour. So that equates to a $3,682 fee per new peak hour trip in the PM. So when a development comes in, we calculate their trip generation, and they would pay this fee for every new PM peak hour trip that this development's projected to generate. And then next slide. That's basically everything, the high points of the studies. It's very complex, but I didn't want to take up too much time tonight. But I just did want to give everybody kind of a preview and kind of let everybody know, what's on tap for next month. And if you have any questions between now and then, if you want to funnel them through Chris, we can address them or address them at the public hearing.
Just for the agenda packet 2, a full copy of the RSA has been included in the agenda packet, as well as the full copy. These are the final reports of the Transportation Capital Improvement Plan in of itself. So those documents are in agenda. We'll be superimposing those onto we're going to create a new kind of transportation projects part of our website and leave these as kind of lasting documents for reference in the future case as well.
Questions?
Open up for questions, public board.
I guess the goal of this is really the impact fee is to reduce the burden on the township, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So
just to make
when
that
we-
clear to the residents.
Yeah, so when we had the original understanding of how to like create some efficiencies of having one project or program kind of work through another project and program, where the goal was to do density of development and enhancements along Route 41 through redevelopment of Route 41 corridors, we would identify intersections along those state-owned corridors that would be essentially subject to a transportation master planning project, if you will, which that's what this was. And then that township cost shifts to the developer cost. They're the ones providing that either as an actual like proffered improvement along their frontage of their right of way, or submission of revenue to the township that we would then put into an earmarked kind of restricted fund as a transportation fund to fund the improvements on those intersections, if that makes sense. And if everybody remembers, this is about capacity improvements, not safety improvements. Those are two different dialogues. So just want to make sure that's true.
Yep.
But yeah, that this is showing us that if you add up all the amounts, it's 60 million in total. Now, some of that is heavily influenced by the Baltimore Pike and I think it's $8 to $9 million additive for the Route 1 interchange. Those are both being fully funded by PennDOT already. We get a constant stream of questions about Baltimore Pike. It is in the final permitting and design phase, probably about within the next few months when they complete stormwater. The other half of Bowman's transportation project team, who's the contract engineer for PennDOT for that project, will be coming in and providing a very thorough overview of the fully designed plan and updates on timeline and implementation. So that's still coming.
That's it. Thanks for clarifying.
So approximately how many new trips are created with when one house is built? Do we have that number?
John, can you answer that? Trips per
Yeah,
unit
basically,
or unit type.
yeah, for single family home, generally the way the linear equation, it's, a logarithmic equation. And basically we generate basically 1 to 10 houses are basically 1 PM peak hour trip per unit. And then it kind of gets slightly less as you go up in the number of units. It's not a 1-to-1 anymore. It's a little bit less. And then single family is generally the most generates the most traffic. Then like multifamily is a little less than that. And then, age restricted would be less than that. Or apartments would be, less than a single family home.
So a couple questions. I'll try to explain this the best I can. So in the transportation service area and the maps that we just looked at, they have roundabouts, turning lane, signalization, things of that nature. Are we bound to what we're seeing there on paper? So for instance, if we didn't want the roundabout, and I know PennDOT's paying for this, but I'll just use that as an example. If we didn't want the roundabout at Route 1 bypass, could we do a traffic signalization such as they have in Kennett and Jennersville off of the exit, or are we bound to what's on this paper?
In terms of the capital improvement plan, I would say you're not bound. There's flexibility, when you take a project, if you can justify it's for capacity and it's kind of meeting the needs of the original improvement, and you're not spending more than what was allocated for the project. It's a little bit different with the planned PennDOT project, the example you gave. PennDOT is moving forward. That's their project, so we just assumed what they were recommending, what their recommendation is now. So that would be a slightly different discussion. But I think, if you spent your money for an improvement that was different from this, and again, it met the need, the capacity need, and you weren't overspending what was allocated for that intersection, I think that would be a reasonable modification. And then we would just go in and update the capital improvement plan for you.
Gotcha. So if it actually costs more, where, for instance, the Sunnydale intersection, it would probably be less initial capital to fund that, to signalize it and put turning lanes in than it were to be to put a roundabout. However, a roundabout, you don't have the ongoing maintenance with the traffic signals. You
Right.
know, $100,000 for one pole, you know, the electric for the signals, so on and so forth, none of that's included, so.
Yeah, we were looking at a roundabout for that basically 5-point intersection you just noted. And it seemed like the perfect intersection. However, when we gave it to our design engineers to come up with a cost estimate, it was significantly more. I think it was, don't quote me on the number, but I think it was like 5 or 6 times more than the traffic signal because of the land you need it. You have to shift it away from the buildings. So it just got really expensive really fast. So that's why we in the committee didn't recommend the roundabout there. We did look at it. We did kind of, we thought that was going to be the improvement, but it turned out, it was cost prohibitive.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, you were not introduced at the beginning of this. Could I have can't read your last name here, John, if you will. I'm Richard Gaw with the Chester County Press. Your last name is spelled?
YURICK,
And your title?
Senior Project Manager.
Okay. Indulge me for just a second, everyone. First question, Chris, is all of this report on the meeting agenda?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know if I made that clear. It's on the agenda, in the agenda packet. And then now that we've had at least the land use assumption, the RSA is currently for tonight for adoption as a resolution. Things become public accepted documents to transpose them onto the website for just continual reference into the future. So they'll be out there.
Thank you. Has the township allocated funding to help pay for these recommended improvements? Certainly PennDOT is carrying the bulk of the investment here, but has the township allocated a particular fund package or component of its financial scenario to pay for this?
You're talking about just overall transportation budgeting?
That is correct.
Yeah, so the first exercise was to get through Act 209 because historically the township had never established a transportation, we'll call it like master plan. So it's kind of like an unknown liability of what it means to increase transportation capacity in the township. You get a lot of, kind of anecdotes of I hate this intersection or that intersection's terrible, but we had to go through the analysis. So that's what this completes. With that, this is going to stack up in the unfunded capital liabilities column more so than in the funded capital liabilities because of the very modest means of our capital budget, if that makes sense, which right now is primarily really encumbered by paving program projects. So this is one where that's why we were recommending to the board to study in areas where you're likely going to get development and shift the township's financial burden to the developer side. Because you see how far it skews up as you kind of aggregate all the projects together. There's no real revenue source that we get based off of our abilities to fund these projects without heavy assistance from other parties, PennDOT and private equity being the top two.
So you're saying that in all likelihood, that cost will not be passed down to the township residents in the area?
Our job is to deflect it as much as possible. Yeah.
Okay. The total amount projected in terms of investment, there were a lot of numbers thrown around in this presentation. What is the projected total amount of investment from the township for these projects? Can you just come up with a basic number? There's a lot of numbers.
Yeah. John, would it make sense to basically take the right-hand column and just do a summation on these numbers across the board? That would technically be if we didn't have any development and we wanted to improve the levels of service.
Yeah, for tables 1 and 2,
Yeah,
and then it might be slightly higher for some of those kind of fill in the gap intersections I noted, but that might take a little bit more time. But I think for the most part, table 1 and 2, that right column.
so just shy of 860,000 and then just shy of 1.4. If you want to take those after the fact and do a quick calculator, I can't put them fully in my head right now.
Okay.
Yeah, a little over 2.2.
So $2.2 million in investment. Okay.
So-
Based on for the township. Okay.
Yeah.
Last question, and thank you all for your indulgence to get this information correct. I did not understand, John, much about the calculation to determine the impact fee. I just don't understand the equation that equals 3,682 per new trip. Could you break that down a little bit in layman's terms so that I can understand what that is all about? Thank you.
Sure. So basically, when we got to the development capital improvement plan, and then added in a little bit of money, about 10 grand for the cost, part of the cost to put together the roadway sufficiency analysis, that totaled the 12.499 and change amount. That's the development capital improvement share. And then the 3,394 trips is what was projected out of the land use assumptions report. So that was, when we did that report, we projected so many residential units, so much square foot of, commercial space, office space, and then we generated, trips based on, trip generations manuals that are available that we use every day in the transportation engineering industry. So those two numbers basically form our numerator and our denominator. And so it's the capital improvement total that development is responsible for, divided by the number of trips in the PM peak hour that we assumed in the study and we distributed throughout the network. So when you divide those numbers, you get the $3,682. So that'll be assigned when a new development comes in based on their trip generation in the PM peak hour. They'll pay, if they, generate 10 trips, they're going to pay $36,820. If they pay 100, they're going to pay 300, or if they generate 100 trips, they're going to have to pay $368,200.
Who's they?
So, the developer, a new development.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it won't be residents, new residents, or I'm sorry, it won't be existing residents. It'll be new development.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your answers, Chris, as always.
Yeah.
Chris, quick question for you. For Sunnydale and 41, why would that be a 50-50 split? If they're both PennDOT?
John, you want to field that one?
Second.
For the Sunnydale Route 41 improvement, I think you're referring to this one.
Sunnydale.
If I'm looking at it correct. Where?
Sharp is not.
I gotta zoom in.
It's PennDOT.
Ah, here we go.
Penn Green is 14.
Why the split costs between PennDOT and development costs for some of these items? I guess more than just the Sunnydale Route 41 intersection project, but was that the question? Yeah. Okay.
I don't recall off the top of my
Am I
head.
lost here?
17 on page
Yeah,
or on
17.
table 3.
Got it. And you're asking?
Oh, for under existing. So there is a fourth leg to the intersection. And then I don't recall off the top of my head, is Sunnydale a state road or is that a local road? A local road?
It's a state-owned road.
It's a state-owned road. So basically what we do is PennDOT is responsible for half of the improvements along a state road. So we calculate it based on how many, when we get to the intersection, we calculate how many legs are state-owned versus local or private. And then we break that up kind of based on the 50-50. So let me take a look at that calculation. And if we need to adjust it, we will adjust that.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah, that
Thank
would
you.
be that would be 3 PennDOT legs and a private leg.
Okay. Yeah, that might need to be adjusted then. Okay, thank you.
My name is Ajit Kang. I live in Hartfeld community and was HOA member. My question is it in current present dollars or is it in the future 2023 or 25, whenever those are? And
It's-
number two, if we are going to, even if it's less, some of those are those number 1, 2, 3, 4 are prioritized, that's the number one you are going to address, or it just at this point, a study of all the points, then a committee will decide which is to be done first, which is to be done second. And my another question is, knowing this number, if our responsibilities say $1.5 million for the township, are you going to discuss a plan? It's just looking into you're going to retire at that time. Are you going to put in a budget some savings for this activity? If you don't do that, that will never happen. So in a budgeting plan, I'm asking, do you do that way? Like we do that future project? And when I worked in DuPont, then that part of business will start allocating that money for that project. It may get delayed. It's a projection at 235. They may happen at 240, but at least when you come, okay, right, no money. Reason I'm asking, volume of traffic will keep increasing. Population keeps increasing. And I lived here in 1985 to 88, and there was hardly any traffic. And I come on Sharp Road every day morning. You can't even make left or right turn for sometimes 20 minutes. So how you make the prioritization, that's my number one question. Number two is, this budget is for, this value is in today's dollar, or is it projected for that time? If it is, then probably it should be less now. And another question is how you prioritize which goes first. If I'm the one living in community, I'll say, well, do Sharp Road and 41 number one priority. But other people living in different area may say that's the number one, you see. Okay, thank you.
So, Chris, you might need to chime in a little bit as well, but I would say first regarding is it today's dollars or future dollars? The Act 209 doesn't allow us to consider escalation. But what we'll do is we'll get together with the committee probably every 2 years, and we will go in and update the costs and the schedule at that point. So every 2 years it'll get an update and it will be reflective of the current value of the dollar. So that in that way we'll keep it updated. And then it also allows us to adjust the schedule so we don't, kind of go over the required, the schedule, get the township in trouble. And then in terms of prioritization, the committee did not recommend prioritization. They kind of left it, I think up to the township to kind of see, what's needed first and where. Sometimes that, if a new development comes in, that will dictate, what's when a project is needed or what gets prioritized. So, if something, for example, were to happen at White Clay Point, those intersections down at the end of Route 41 would probably rise to the top and be a prioritization. So the capital improvement plan, the way it is trying to give the most flexibility to the township. And this is a new Act 209 fee. So right now their impact fee balance is 0. So part of that is going to take them a little time to build up a reserve in the impact fees. And what will likely happen is, and what a lot of municipalities are doing this now, is they're taking their traffic impact fees and applying to PennDOT for grants. So they're using the impact fees as their local match, and then getting awarded grant money to fund the projects. Or in some instances, a developer might come in and say, they'll just build the frontage improvements or their access improvements, and they'll get a credit towards their impact fee. So there's a couple different mechanisms, but those are kind of how the fee gets updated, as well as kind of how the prioritization kind of works itself out. But Chris, if you had anything to add.
No, I think the order in listing you're seeing is literally just from north to south, from west to east, just like the linear order of intersections as they were identified in the study. So it's pretty arbitrary if you think about it.
Yes.
But it's right. It was really just intended to be a list, and it's based off a moment of opportunity. You never know when development will be activated. This is really conditioned upon kind of like a 10-year by 10-year by 10-year review of the township. So we would, in theory, kind of like a comp plan, update this holistically every 10 years. And that's why it really focuses on that land use assumption 10-year feasibility more so than total build out of the township, which is why when we talked about the total LUR, if you remember from a few months ago, total build out is a different one, but it's unprojectable. You never know where you're going to get to that ultimate build out state. So it's just in 10-year chunks. If there are no more comments, I do have a few comments online. I'll just kind of quickly go through them. It's from Dan Linderman. So first one is just long-term cost per year of signalized intersections. And so basically the focus of 209 being mostly installation cost, but not reoccurring maintenance cost. I believe, Kenny, off the top of my head, our transportation, traffic, and signal kind of combined budget in our general fund is about $36K per year. That's for a couple different items on there. That's just for general maintenance, or if we need to kind of do low-end commodity type replacements and repairs, that would be that. So of course, yes, as you add in intersections, that absolutely increases our operating cost to that incrementally per intersection improvement that would be long-term held by the township as just another roadway improvement function of that. The replacement element, that's variable. So of course, we were going to talk later today about the Baltimore Pike intersection that had a new decoration on it that we'll bring up on the screen here. But yeah, something like that ranges between probably 50 to 100K per, dependent upon just the scale and magnitude of the light signal. With that, another comment was 2 lanes shouldn't be needed anywhere along Route 41. Additional capacity cannot overfill an existing road. That's a general comment. I'm still trying to get through. Do the recommendations change when safety improvement is considered? I guess that's more for John. Like if you have a development that has safety unmet conditions and you have the capacity, does the recommendation from an engineering standpoint change? Because
Right.
Act 209 is only about capacity.
Right. We did not identify any, or we didn't evaluate crash reports with this effort, but I think we know the township pretty well. We know where there are existing safety concerns for the most part. We did look at safety when we did the Route 41 study. So, we had an eye for the capacity or for the safety improvements when we were looking at capacity improvements. So, on those intersections where it's unsignalized intersections where you're at a stop sign, it's difficult to get out onto the main road. A lot of instances there are a signalization was recommended. There were turn lanes along Route 41 that were recommended, envisioning right now that there are a lot of driveways. As you travel down the corridor, there are not generally too many turn lanes. There's not a center left turn lane. So we had that. We did incorporate elements like that into our capacity improvements.
Then the last comment really was when we mentioned the 5X cost estimate for the Sunnydale roundabout function, was that for a 1 or 2 lane roundabout?
I believe it was a 1.
1 lane, got it.
Yeah, I can confirm that, but I believe it was
and
1
if-
lane.
You can visualize it, it's mostly for the northern side on the northerly side of the private driveway. The land essentially it doesn't taper off, it just falls off and almost right into, I think it's a CrossFit fitness kind of thing. So that would essentially, the amount of right-of-way acquisition and take would basically remove that structure from existence. I think that's what we talked about in the actual committee sessions. So that's
Mhm.
a lot of fill. Any other questions? Okay. John, I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Next, we have the minutes from the May 19th, 2025 board meeting. Is there a motion to approve such minutes?
I'll make a motion, we adopt the minutes as submitted.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, the treasurer's report. There are paid invoices in the amount of $39,802.96 and unpaid invoices in the amount of $339,371.52. Steve, do you want to make your statement?
Yeah, there are 2 invoices on there that were billed for RM Crossing. RM Crossing is my employer. I will have to recuse from any action on that.
Is there a motion to approve the paid and unpaid invoices?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There's no public safety report this month. Next is the monthly department report. Chris?
All right, check. All right. So this is what we've been trying to do just to infuse ongoing monthly manager reports. Basically, it's a departmental performance report into every single meeting. We got kind of chipped on time on the April meeting, and so we just kind of supplied it in the packet, but this is just a continuation of what we're doing internally as a township from month to month. And of course, there you go. So just wanted a quick overview, upcoming public meeting dates. I won't go through all of them. Big one though coming up is next Wednesday, the zoning hearing, the zoning public hearing number 1 at the Planning Commission. Plan to be here at Town Hall at 7 o'clock. We're gonna have an advertisement out here shortly. We're waiting for the zoning consultant, Michael Baker International, to finalize the actual significant Chapter 200 document. What they're also going to do is update their own internal website to sort out all the noise. It's one of the common things that we get from residents. It's just a lot of information out there. So we're going to put it into like a public hearing part of their website. So it's just, you go there to the public hearing site, there's all your documents, everything that kind of move along the breadcrumbs till the end of the process. But with that, just wanted to, I think we decided upon it, Robert, we're going to advertise for, there's 1 agenda item pending for the Planning Commission. So the goal is going to be to actually start the Planning Commission meeting at 6:30, just to go over that one. It's a zoning hearing application. It's actually on our agenda tonight, and then promptly start the public hearing for the zoning project at 7 o'clock. It was just kind of a sequencing of stuff. We tried to clear the deck, but we had to get that through. So if people show up and they're talking about something, they didn't start without them. If they really want to show up and learn about local, small kind of zoning hearing matters, feel free. But that's kind of say, so 6:30 PC start for just the one formal agenda item, 7 o'clock, the actual public hearing, just to try to make it a little bit more difficult to follow along here. With that, everything else is pretty much just township holidays and monthly meetings, so they shouldn't be of news to anybody. And just know internally, we're working diligently on our audit. And if people have in the room received one or not, the community survey has been distributed by the provider. So if you're one of the lucky chosen random sampled few, please fill that out based off the instructions via resubmitting it via email. You can call and give your answers over the phone, as well as in bilingual context. And then also you can do it online. Communications, this is just a brief kind of month-to-month where we track kind of people's interest in the township. You did see it did drop down. I think there was coinciding with that with the workshop that we had for the zoning project, but that was about it. Nothing really out of the ordinary here. Our 311 tracker is online. We do get to those. So general concerns come to township administration staff. All the other ones get reported out to the departments. We try to open and close projects accordingly and get feedback. Still kind of fine tuning that kind of ability to get the feedback back to people. So we're working on an internal control to make sure that that happens, but just know that it is up and running. We do hear comments and we're trying to get back to you as soon as we can. I won't go through all the breakdowns individually of this, but just kind of an overview. You can see our grounds crew for our public works, our Parks and Recreation Department, just kind of how they're divvying up their kind of allocated labor dollars, getting our parks up for just, I'll call them the height of the park use season for the most part, for making sure everything's conditioned and ready for residents. So May was a big lift to get that ready to go. And these are just all the breakdowns of where they were focusing on. And of course, a big part of that is always going to be grounds maintenance. For community development, these are just a lot of some of the matters we're going to discuss tonight. Just kind of the level of applications that are currently submitted into the township. So nothing out of the ordinary here. With that, fire marshal investigations, I believe the dollar loss value was mostly attributed to the hay bale fire that was on Star Road a few weeks back. So that was what you're seeing there, the dollar amount total to that. It was a pretty big fire and it kept going for a while, right? No. So we do track our property maintenance, our International Property Maintenance Code and other enforcement matters when it comes to zoning enforcement. So these are issuances of citations, notices of violations throughout the township. This is just for the month of May. And, we're out there, we have our staff kind of constantly doing proactive and of course, just based off of submissions, reactive enforcement in terms of just notification of where an issue may or may not be. A lot of it also is just, you'll go into a commercial building inspection with the fire marshal, and then you'll see a bunch of zoning violations, and then you get them back for the violation. So by having all the programs kind of out and present, we're able to kind of have full, as much as we can, capture of noticing of what's kind of not up to our code in the township. And that's for residential and commercial. So this is our rental inspection program. We're now, in full on in year 2 of it. It's going well. So we had our recent re-inspection process start off. These are just some of the common elements to them. Some of them are more seemly, less seemly than others. So a lot of kind of infestation type issues you see out there as well. This is why we wanted to make sure that we were enabling some sort of pre-inspection or continuing inspection to make sure that rental properties in the township are conditioned for habitable use for residents. Just some ongoing fee revenues by months for the month, for the first, I'll call it 4 months, 5 months in the year. So just general, a lot of it is kind of in February. Starting off, there was a lot of just planned activity for like pre-planning for spring time frame for deck expansions and stuff like that. So seasonality wise, nothing too unfamiliar here. And I won't go through all of these individually here, but just know that we're doing well in capturing work in the township, which this was not tracked prior, a few years prior. So we just started up tracking and making sure that we were enforcing it as well. And we'll start getting this into year-over-year kind of comparisons as we continue to build out the metrics, just so we can see when things are abnormally happening in the township. If we see like a big drop, it's like maybe that's something that's going on that we can look into. Public works, this tends to shift until we get to paving time frame in the late summer, then it shifts almost completely skewed towards roads maintenance. But right now, we've had some really, really wet months to lead off the year, today being no different. So a lot of it has just been kind of split between the stormwater and road maintenance function for our Public Works Department. In which case you can see in May, we had a much wetter month in May, so we had a lot of stormwater, as well as we were just getting a lot of, I'll call them inlet boxes and stuff like corrected on some roads that we have planned for paving program operations later on this summer, specifically in this case, Hillendale Road. This is just general things that we get, fee, shrubage kind of cleanup. This was a retrofit of a stormwater pipe on what intersection, Kenny? Hillendale, that's right. And that's right, because we're gonna do phase one Hillendale from Newark Road all the way to Thompson joint, starting, it's about a month from now, right? Yep. Yep. So that'll be a full kind of down to the studs and repaving of half of Hillendale Road. I can't remember where this one is. There you go, thank you. Segueing into New Garden Flying Field Airport Division, pretty much rolling right along for the fiscal year. So track activity, I know it's tough to see. We have kind of year over year kind of analysis, but you can see we're kind of within the framework for prior years. Garmin sales tend to be very just in spur in the moment. It's when we actually get a sale for someone doing an avionics upfit on their aircraft, so it's tough to kind of project out. We just have a sales goal as a department of 100K with our contract per, then we exceed that pretty much almost within the first 2 months of the last 2 years. So it's very, it's like owning a plane is like owning a boat. You know, people constantly want to work on it and make it and improve it. And now, of course, we have the ability to do that. Monthly tracking, we're going to shift this into probably more of a month over month and year over year type view as we kind of continually track seasonal use of the flight school. So that's what these hours are tracking. It's that and our actual aircraft know themselves. A little tougher to see, but this is just another month over month measurement for the flight school. This is a newer update. We started doing it in April. So one thing that was provided to the township as a service, if you've ever been in the runway area, probably very few have been, all of our runway counts were prior performed by Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. So it was kind of like a sensory tool monitoring for acoustic levels. So basically if something kind of rumbles by, it measures that and that's a runway hit. So the importance of that is to maintain our federal feeder status as an airport. We need to get above, I think it's like 22,000 runway counts per year. And of course, that gets us into an upper echelon to get grant funding via the FAA through the Bureau of Aviation in Pennsylvania to get that going. And it's one where you really want to make sure that count is as specific as it can get. So with that, we upgraded to a more better sensory tool. It's essentially monitors, for those who are aviation enthusiasts, mode C transponder signals. And so it's completely accurate because it's from an airplane that's turned on glider traffic. I think it's mode S, but essentially it allows for a more detailed count. And with that, it gives us actual time of day type data and usage data on the airfield as well. So it really helps us understand not just the count, but what does that mean capacity in terms of operating kind of footprint on the airport and of itself. So more of a geek if you're like for aviation kind of functionality to it, but good to know. Another one too is that same information then gets transpired into a categorical use base, if you will. You're probably not going to get a lot of detail out of here, but the one thing you can see is over half of the runway counts are from our own flight school, which is heavily important, the reason why an active flight school is so vital for the airport. Then just some general updates. Coming up next month is the first camp. We have 2 of them planned for the year. The air show has been moved back to the weekend, so will still be a night and daytime air show for the program there. It was a really good success last year. It was on a Tuesday, so it's one where that's planned to be back on Saturday. So we anticipate a higher crowd. And I think, is that it? I think that's it. Any questions?
There's no unfinished business. Moving on to new business. First item is a resolution for the Act 209 roadway sufficiency analysis. This is the presentation John from Bowman just took us through. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2025-012, accepting the Act 209 roadway sufficiency analysis?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Chris, do we need to make the modifications first or?
So what was the question?
For the Act 209, does the presentation he just made, there were a couple of errors?
Yeah, we can annotate those areas. You can accept the document, but still amend it because it really counts when you actually adopt the fee. So we can
Perfect.
make those.
Okay.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Related to that, we have a authorization of an advertisement for the ordinance. Is there a motion to authorize the advertisement for adoption of Act 209?
I'll make the motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have the escrow release number 3 for Delaware Storage Avondale LLC in the amount of $44,311.44. Chris, anything you want to add there?
No, this was the final release. The information's in the packet in terms of the final inspections of what was done. It includes some of it as the contingency amount. So that's Pannoni's sign off and the completed work. I can't remember off the top of my head in the actual packet, it says for some of the reason of the delay, because this was a project commissioned a while back. But yes, this is signing off the fact that all the work has been completed and it's ready to be closed out.
Is there a motion to approve the release of such funds?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have the Thompson escrow release number 2 for the Thompson tract Longwood at Stonebridge in the amount of $512,065.39, leaving a balance of a little over 3 million. Any comment, Chris?
Now, this one's actually more straightforward. So they've completed site clearing work. Robert, I think have they submitted the first permit for the building of the resident? I know they're asking for that at least to build the model home soon. But essentially right now it's mostly clearing the way for the input of Thompson Road, which is what they're working on right now.
Is there a motion to approve the release?
I'll make a motion to approve release number 2 for the Thompson Road project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have the release number 1 for the Pleasantville Farms. Such release is in the amount of $6,654.50. Anything, Chris?
Right now, I think the only real scaled work that's been done is site clearing on the existing site. Robert, anything? Yeah. That's why the amount's pretty small.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have the Kaolin Star Road Extension. Resolution number 25013 to extend the approval of land development for the property located at Kaolin Star Road. Is that you, Winnie?
This was approved by the township. This was approved by the Board of Supervisors on May 15th, 2023. So periodically, they have asked for an extension of the approval, and that this extends it until January 6th, 2026.
Just have a question. What is the purpose of the extension?
Well, when we approved,
Prolonged extension.
right, when we approved it, as always, we approve it by resolution, and they have 90 days to come up with the financial security. And they then ask for extensions for that. And they're not limited to 90 days. And my understanding is that they have not, I'm not going to say they have not been able to secure financial security for it, but they have elected not to. So they have an approved plan. They just are not ready to build it yet, I think.
That's the plan that came in 10+ years ago, and then they didn't do anything on it for a long time, and then came back and asked us to re-amend it. Do you recall
It's-
that, Steve?
I think
It's
this
in the
was,
little triangle.
this was part of the the tunnels for Keolum,
This is on,
Star Road, 100 block of Star Road,
it's a 59 acre
Yeah, which is
piece.
where the smoke was coming from last couple of weeks.
It's a 59 acre
East of-
piece.
It's,
Is it east of Penn Green or west of Penn Green?
I don't-
it's on the other side,
Santilli, Santilli
west,
Road?
west of
Right.
Penn
Yeah,
Green.
it's in the little triangle.
Correct.
Yeah. I thought.
Except
there was
it's,
some-
well, it's 60 acres, so it's not too little. But it's on Saley Road. And it says it's for a mushroom facility.
Yeah, this was part of the original land development, and this, I believe, is related to the last two buildings. I think one of which.
Yeah,
is-
that was the project that was improved in May of 23.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, did you want to add something?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, on
Oh,
the
okay.
other side of
Oh,
Star.
all right. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the extension?
How many days are they asking for on this?
6 months until January 6, 2026.
Has anyone been in contact with them on this particular item?
I have been in touch. Their attorney generally contacts me and asks for the extension and then sends the letter asking for it.
In the event that we do not approve the extension, what happens? Is there a grace period to get the
No.
financing? We end up with,
It ends, as it stands now, their extension ends on July 5th, 2025. So if you don't extend it now, then their approval would be terminated. That is, if you don't approve this tonight, their extension ends before your next meeting. So. It's not an unusual thing to ask, so I'm not sure.
We think it was the fire. Fire that keeps burning.
I
That
see.
maybe.
Is that what it is?
Blocking or. um,
Is that actually where the fire came from?
Mhm.
do we know how many times we've granted the extension?
A lot. If you look at the
lot.
resolution,
So
we
since 2023, it'd be 2024, so this would be the third time.
we extended it on August, it was approved on May 15th of 23. We extended it on August 21st for 180 days. Extended it on, that's of 23. We extended it on December 18th, 23 for 180 days. We extended on July 15th, 24 for 180 days. And we extended on January. And tonight we're extending it by 180 days to January 6th.
Yeah.
Five.
Six.
Say again?
It would be 6,
Six tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've done it five.
but we've done it 5 times. Yep.
I'll say no. If that's easier.
Yeah, the impact it would be if they came back forward with another land development, it would just have to go through another submission process, which essentially is at the kind of. So it's just having them not go through land development. That's just my own understanding as a staff recommendation.
We really can't. I think if you have an objection to the length of time, because this would be without warning to them that you were going to reject this, because you have consistently done, then I would at least do it
Hmm.
until your next meeting in July. because I think this would, if you don't want to do the 6th, then I would say just do 1 month at least to get us to there. And then you can notify them that have questions about the frequent extensions.
I think that's more than fair. So it's July 5th, so that we would go to August 5th with a roughly a 30-day extension.
Okay.
Ironically, that's when the Jennersville Hospital says they're going to take their first patient. And they were actually pouring footers today. Kenny, what's your thoughts? Exactly.
All right.
Fair? Okay.
Be on board with that. That works. August
So
5th?
extending it 60 days.
To August 5th.
Correct. That gives them,
That's only-
that gives them to the July, so they have to have a resolution or an explanation in the July meeting.
Well, I was going to say, the only data point we have between them
Right.
is the July 21st meeting. I just asked as a side to Winnie if they're required to give reasoning for it in depth detail. They're not, so they can just either
How about if
provide something with clarification for the reason for
Right.
6 extension requests over the course of the last 2.5 years almost.
Be the 5th of August.
How about instead of days, you just extend it to the July 21st meeting?
Oh, you want to give them?
You want to just do to the,
Okay.
Well, August 5th is no help
right.
because you don't have a meeting.
Do you
So
want it till September?
So
Cut 6 months in half?
that's fine. I mean, I just, make it to a meeting time in July, because otherwise, if you want, or a meeting time in August, because if you make it August 5th, it's just really still only a month.
okay, fair enough.
Till the September meeting then?
Your pleasure.
September works.
So
For me.
the,
September 20th or something?
I'll make a motion, we make the extension until the September meeting date,
September 15th.
one day after the September meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Is that fair?
September
16th.
Excellent.
So-
Cool.
Is there a second to Steve's motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll fix this tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Next, we have 147 Maple Lane. Robert?
I don't believe they're going to be looking for any extensions just to get this done. So it's 147 Maple Lane. Mr. Rechester's in the back with his son. Tom Shire at Hillcrest is the designer. You may remember this from the zoning hearing board application in September 2024, but it's 5.14 acres in the R1 zoning district. It has 2 existing dwelling units. The applicant is proposing preliminary final to create 3 acres and construct a single-family resident for a family member. So everybody on the property will be related. As you, the ordinance for variance that they got from the zoning hearing board was on building setback lines, which was granted. Going to be serviced by, Lot 1 is serviced by public water and sewer. Lot 2, the newly created dwelling will be serviced by water and on-lot sewer. And then Lot 3 is an existing single-family dwelling serviced by public water and on-lot sewer. Permits are required by the Chester County Health Department. Then the next, you can see there's 5 waiver requests. Each waiver is listed on your application or on the memo and also on the plan. And then the Planning Commission made a motion to support the 5 waivers and the project compliance with approvals of permitting, memorializing the easements, and then about the adequate screening for the historic property, which I believe Mr. Shire can kind of explain in his comments. So the plan is up there if there's any questions, but I'll turn it over to Tom to field any questions.
Did the waivers been granted or?
The waivers are to be granted as part of the final plan approval.
No?
I think it's
Yeah, no. Tom Schreier, Hillcrest Associates, here this evening on behalf of George and Joanne Regester. As you can see from the letter, we have pretty much a clean review letter from Pannoni with regard to, obviously, we're requesting the 5 waivers, which I can go into detail, but in our opinion are kind of more related to a larger subdivision development and its implications to the surrounding communities. Based upon the letter that Pannoni provided, there are a couple items I just wanted to touch base on. Ultimately, zoning number 1, which relates to the historic nature of 147 Maple and the house being on New Gardens list. Our request, I guess the ordinance is requesting that we buffer that house from the adjoining properties. Our request would be that because the proposed home next to the historic house is going to be for a direct family member, that we put within the deed that if either of the homes were to be sold to a non-family member, that the buffer be implemented at that time. We understand the buffering requirements and what they're there for, but obviously being that this is for family members, we feel that providing that buffer from it is not meeting the goals of what they're trying to do.
What section requires that?
The letter says 200-172.c. Yes.
Yeah, it's just in there, Winnie, that that it's required to be screened. That was not part of the zoning hearing board's procedure.
So your position is that you're not asking for a variance, you will comply if it goes out of the family?
Yes.
But it's in the zoning ordinance? Yes.
The
100 is the zoning ordinance.
So are you getting at that they need to go before the zoning hearing board for that waiver?
I don't. It can't be a waiver from the zoning ordinance.
We're not
But they're not,
ultimately-
they're not trying to
You're just
do
asking
away
for
with
the
it.
elect-
Yes.
We are willing to comply with the section at the time of the house being sold to a non.
The variance you just wanted to let.
Correct.
And it'll be in the deed.
Next one within the subdivision and land development just talks about recreational areas. Obviously, because of the minor nature of this project, we would be seeking a fee in lieu, but that would need to be ultimately decided by the board members.
Planning Commission wanted you to provide the screening. That was said by-
No, Planning Commission made the recommendation that the screening be installed if the house was ever to be sold to a non-family member.
Yeah, they were just looking
Yes.
for some sort of addressing that issue.
Yeah, we are, well, I think the last one I was talking about was just about the recreational areas. And being for the simple nature of the project, we are seeking the fee in lieu rather than providing it, which ultimately has to be decided by the supervisors if that is appropriate.
You do a calculation.
I did not.
To be sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we would just put the note on the cover sheet once those calculations are performed.
Well, just to kind of clarify, for major subdevelopment, it's for kind of that purpose of serving a neighborhood. This is how many homes? 3, 2? Yeah, so, and they're all in the family.
2 of them are
Yeah, they could go to Lowe's and get a swing set and satisfy the requirement. I don't know. I would,
I wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah.
And I think I have to recuse though because it was a
Mm.
very board, so. My opinion wasn't finished.
I think that's done.
We're done.
Mm.
All right. well,
They're finished, yes.
Then my opinion now. Then I'm good.
To approve the grant the waivers, if that's what you. So one step at a time, that one first. We approve the plan.
Yeah, I'll make. Turn my mic on. I'll make a motion that we approve the waivers that are listed in the subdivision land development code in conjunction with the Regester project,
I'll second.
147 Maple Lane.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then there's another one.
Motion to approve the plan, subject to the condition that the deeds transferring the properties out contain a requirement that upon the properties transferring out of the Regester family, that in that event, the screening for the adjacent historic property has to start.
Is there a motion as Winnie explained it?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve what Winnie said.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The other thing, that there's a note about easement. There's a note about memorializing easements now that they've already approved it. Can you tell me what the easements are?
So there's an existing 20-foot wide access easement in the north corner.
Okay,
But as part of the proposed plan, we're proposing a driveway easement for Lot 2 to access their driveway. The existing driveway already exists today. It's on Lot 3. So as part of this approval, obviously, we'll amend the plans. We'll get deeds drafted up, easements drafted up, and we can supply them to you for your review and approval prior to execution.
okay. So then another motion that the applicant will provide easements to be approved by the township solicitor, which will then be recorded prior to any deed transfers,
Perfect.
right? Okay.
I'll make the motion contingent upon our solicitor's review and approval.
that's why you speaking to.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Did it?
Yep, I think we're good.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have zoning hearing board application for 132 Main Street. Robert?
Yep, so this one is a result of our assistant zoning officer conducting a site visit, which actually started from the fire marshal. So as Chris said in his manager's report, kind of multiple hats circling around to work on these issues. But it's approximately 1.6 acres in R1, the residential district. The building is being used by 3 separate businesses. According to the applicant, they purchased it in 2020, and it was used as an auto repair business. So the was doing auto repair, and then in.
Are we talking about 132 or 927?
Oh, I'm sorry. Whoops, I'm sorry, that's my fault.
No, I just want to make sure I started catching on. Like, wait a second.
So 132, go back, is rapid remodeling, which has been in front of zoning hearing, got a special exception for 35%. If you remember, that was the building that was destroyed by fire. He had to go before the special exception to keep that use. At the same time, he got a variance to put a new garage on the back side of his property. And he met the parking requirements at that time. He has now come in, wants to put an office over top of the new garage, and he needs a variance to do that because it's an additional use on there. And also for relief from the parking, because it would require 8 parking spaces and he currently only has 6.
And your recommendation is to take no action, Robert?
That's correct.
Well, we do have an interest. Yeah, sorry. Or maybe not.
There is a secondary.
There is a secondary interest in the sidewalk project. Mr. Weir, what do you think?
You, Chris, want to explain it?
Oh, so just to kind of get everyone's memories, because it's been a project that's been ongoing. There's 6 total parcels, because I think when they subdivided and sold off the one kind of townhouse, it's a duplex, it made for 6 properties on the frontage of Main Street on the southerly side, where that expansion of the sidewalk project has been in motion since probably the last few years. But with that, he's the last pending signer of the easements for, construction and right-of-way, deed of easement. And with that, he's always been trying to solve the equation for parking allowances on his property versus on the street for dedicated parking for his property to support his business. Because he does has a dedicated on-site use for a business function there in Tough Kenneman. It's just been one where the site where he has on the what's the total acreage of his site?
It's like 0.4, it's under
Yeah.
half an acre.
So it's a tight area, and it just can't get those extra 2 spots on the site. So that's why he was asking for the waivering and the amenability by not having us pursue eminent domain procedures to capture the necessary easements to go through a process where comes to an understanding that we would support this project to have the lessening of the space. He still has to go through zoning hearing on the actual use decision, but the attachment of the waiver ability for the non-required parking counts. So that would be kind of the whole context of the picture there on the property. And that's why, I mean, overall, if you've been in the area, there are improvements happening by his inputs on the sidewalk. The house in of itself, it's next door, the one across the street, as well as this property as well. There was a building that was burnt down. So he's been kind of slowly building out his, we'll call him enterprise, if you will, like on Main Street in Tough Kenneman. So, and it's also one where we don't have a parking ordinance for Tough Kenneman right now. We have a development-based parking zoning function. So there's really not a whole lot of understanding that does this project really have a saturation of parking issues on the streets, and it wouldn't be almost negligible, if you will. So just something to consider. And then as well as we know in the new zoning ordinance that's coming forward by the next few public hearings, the parking ordinance goes through a change where instead of just like if this square footage, then this unit count for parking spaces, it goes to a parking analysis completion. So if essentially this one would be one where you would show that there would be almost a negligible impact for having additive square footage for just dedicated commercial space to support the remodeling business down below.
Yeah, the two additional parking spaces requires one for one employee, and then it requires the second one for an office
Yeah.
category under 300.
Essentially, it would be seen as the 6 is already more than enough. So 8 would be saturation on the site, if that makes sense.
So what's the board supposed to do about the sidewalk issue? Anything?
No, not at all. This would just be one where we would have a pathway to an amenable conclusion of that process versus having to just supersede everything with eminent domain procedure. So either way, we're continuing with that project. This is just the most amicable way to do it. And we're trying to work with the property owner. There's just a lot of constraints for us to seek other solutions there for the site.
So we should support his application to the zoning?
That's why we were putting it in there, if you will.
Yeah, I, after thinking it through, I would support the project if we can get the resolve of the 2 parking spaces. Then we don't have to go through the eminent domain procedure. If you go down Main Street, it's probably one of the nicer properties on Main Street in Tough Kenneman. And it used to be a dump that had trees growing up through part of the garage.
And the future Baltimore Pike intersection actually will be bringing sidewalk from the intersection all the way down Newark Road and connect into the sidewalk and make it all the way to the post office. So it's not still an arbitrary sidewalk project. It's now kind of a lot more network completion for walking paths in Tough Kenneman.
So how do we word that properly about the 2 spaces in the front and supporting the application?
What
If-
he's
if
asking for is
that's
just
what
a
the board
variance.
wants to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
As one piece, the use for the office and then the variance for the 2 parking spots. I think that you can probably leave it alone and just say that the Board of Supervisors supports it if you want to go down that path. But I don't,
I agree. I think Robert's correct. Just a motion to support.
Motion to support, that's my motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. That's a little trickier one than,
Now
Trickier
for
than
the-
that?
Now for the one, right?
what's that?
Now for 927.
No
Yeah,
parking
this-
spaces, are there?
One's a little different one. But anyhow, I won't go back over the whole thing, but really it's 3 businesses in one building. One, it would be the auto repair. One of the other ones we believe is a business that takes car parts and sells them on the internet. So I would call that sales, not auto repairs. So it's another use. That's kind of where it is. It's in front of the zoning here. It'll be in front of the zoning hearing board. Don't see any real reason why the Board of Supervisors need to take a action unless you were to kind of do with the 115 Mercer Mill, where the board elected to send your solicitor as a representative of the township. And that's open for discussion. I recommend with all the complicated pieces to this that the solicitors sent to represent the township. I'm sorry, I can't. The 14th of July. The PC took no action due to the fact the applicant didn't show up.
Chris, any thoughts?
For consistency based off of, this is the second occurrence that we've had kind of I'll call it an adaptive, non-compliant reuse of a kind of agricultural property. So really, it's just the recommendation for board consistency in the approach that if you're gonna seek to kind of have, I'll call it like a vision for that, but essentially a process in place that for every one of these ones where you have multiple uses operating out of a singular area, what is your intent? And to make sure that that is at least consistent, so we can at least make that kind of precedent known for when we're dealing with just, because this will repeat itself. That's what I guess is probably the easy way
Yeah,
to put it.
the last one, they pulled their application.
Yeah, they just went somewhere else, correct?
Oh.
Yeah. It was easier to do that.
So is the
Think
board,
If you're going to have something, the township needs to take a stance.
If you file a motion to send the solicitor and the zoning officer to support the ordinance, make sure the ordinance is enforced. Maybe that's a very good way to do it.
Yeah, as well as, the concern for me is in seeing many times these retrofit operations, they're fire safety issues, they're safety issues in general.
Mhm.
The parking is not there. A little different than what the guy in Tough Kenneman's trying to do. He's trying to make it and comply with what we have on the books, I believe. So if that's the intent of sending the solicitor,
I think it's, yeah, I think
I-
enforcing the ordinances kind of gives us some flexibility as we go through the hearing.
so is there a motion to approve the ordinance as when he described it?
I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Robert.
Thank
I
you.
think that's it, right?
Yep.
Just the, well, we don't really have to have a presentation on it.
Blake?
There is one more. So it's an appointment of the alternate member for the zoning hearing board. Currently, we have 3 members on it with 1 alternate, and this would be an additional alternate. The gentleman lives in Brittany Hills. He came to the zoning discussions and felt an interest to participate in the township. So it was either planning commission or zoning hearing board, and there was not any vacancies on the planning commission. So this was another opportunity because there are times when we need another alternate on the zoning hearing board. So I would just make the recommendation that you approve appointing him to the zoning hearing board.
Thank you, Robert. Is there a motion to approve Anthony Bamonte as a zoning hearing board alternate member for a 3-year term, effective immediately with the term expiring on January 1, 2028?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Last, we have road bank mower financing.
So this is just a procedural step for when we secure financing by resolution. But to backdate the actual, when we approved the project, it was under the, it was back in FY '24. So the difference in kind of cost estimates versus reality is just the stay period between a purchase order being made to delivery of equipment to the township. And of course, you're subject to range of variability of interest rates as they kind of happen upon. And of course, for this one, it was only a modest increase in the originally forecast rate. So it's actually not a significant impact to the budget, but it is one where it did go up. So I think the overall budget was about $3,600-esque increase over a term of 5 years. So just under $1,000 per year added cost out of the capital budget. So they're based off of a lot of a relief in other areas that we've already done. I think we could get at least, what, 60, 70,000 already off our paving program in FY '25 as a contingency. So in the net, it's one where we can easily absorb the added expense over 5 years. So this is a recommendation to approve. And this is for the road bank mower to replace the one that hopefully it makes it through this season.
I'll make the motion to approve the financing for the road bank mower.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chris, managers report?
Yes, these were just come informal topics, nothing really deciding upon tonight. But with that, the first one was just an update on the Baltimore Pike traffic light, if you will. I don't know if Kenny has any more details as it came through the day, but for the most part, if you haven't been through the intersection, I'm going to try to bring up a picture of here once it comes up. It has a lovely new addition. So a truck kind of hit it and turned it. Did it turn it sideways or just bend it? And then we've turned it back. So it's, there you go. Yeah. So still in kind of going through Southern Chester County Regional Police, I still don't think they've had conclusiveness to the investigation following up, but essentially it's one where this is deemed like an emergency repair. So you can see right now they've already poured the footing for the new bottom base part. It's back here behind this retaining wall, and when's it going to go in? The new one? When's the new one going in? Yeah. So this is one where they fix it and send you the bill later. So we'll have the justification for the staff recommendation for the expense in July. I'm assuming we'll be able to get that together. If not in August, and it's a pop-up cost to the township that will seek for full reimbursement from our insurance provider. In terms of how much of that, it's still iffy, so I won't give an exact percentage of it, but we will seek the full amount. So I just wanted to provide that as an update, that the reason you're not seeing the expense justification tonight is because that just timeline and timeliness, it's still being put together for the whole estimate for what is being done. And who is the contract? Higgins, or who's our normal street light provider as well. Any questions, cautions, concerns? This was a commercial vehicle, 18-wheeler coming through, and it was it coming southbound and then turned right? No. And this is the light that gets hit all the time. And yes, of course, we're fixing a light with the potential not to be fully reimbursed for a project where the construction is forecast on this project starting in FY '27. So we're repairing a light that's going to probably get removed and reset anyway again. No, it will get removed. So, but that's the cost of business right now, unfortunately, based off of just the aspects of the intersection to start. We can't leave it in this condition. I'll repeat, we cannot leave it in this condition. It is a traffic safety concern, especially in severe weather conditions and stuff. So we want to make sure that it's replaced. Any other questions? So just like that.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I actually wanted to bring up an additional thing under new business unfinished. Is there an opportunity to do that today, or have I?
The Board of Supervisors sets the agenda.
Sorry?
The Board of Supervisors sets the agenda, and there's no action on anything of any significance that isn't on the pre-published agenda. So you can make a suggestion, and then somebody could deal with it next month, but not for tonight.
The next item was a no solicitation ordinance. The one gentleman from Pemberton, Mr. Lowenstein, came in early to talk about it. I did have some feedback from, of course, staff, and that's including Southern Chester County Regional Police. So they do receive multiple complaints about the issue per year. He said this year alone, they received approximately 10 complaints, 15 complaints in the last year for solicitors. So it's just an ongoing issue. It's not like thousands, but of course it is a complaint, and that's reported complaints, not necessarily ones that are going unreported. So just to kind of put a holistic lens on it, I don't know when it was actually adopted by the township, but the last amendment to the existing ordinance that allows for solicitation of the township was done in 2017. I think there were some revisions and definitions and stuff, but solicitation has been allowed in the township as a part of our ordinance ongoing, which is why we give permits and issue that to solicitors to go to properties. Now that basically conflates with essentially any sort of like deed restricted kind of HOA community that doesn't allow for it. And now you have kind of like a merger of conflicting elements to it. And it's one where the township is primarily comprised of a lot of significant population centers and HOAs. And so it's just one where doesn't make sense to continue to have an ordinance such as a soliciting ordinance for the township. In terms of staff time obligated for just processing the paperwork, it does require background checks. We do have to basically chase down the details for some of these companies with their roster of people that need to be vetted by police. So it's a lot of like administrative work for very little gain to the township. $300 permit probably doesn't pay for the fact that you had dedicated staff time and police officers doing background checks that don't come back and reimburse. So the revenues actually probably don't even mount up to the staff time to get it done in the first place, as well as just how much do you want your local police department doing background checks for solicitors. So it's just not from this end, staff recommendation would be and that's not a decision for tonight, to pursue a no solicitation ordinance because the benefits don't necessarily outweigh the costs. But tonight was just to get a kind of a sentiment analysis. We've done this in the past with projected ordinance proposals, just to discuss it first before pursuing actual legal time to craft the ordinance and advertise, which would be done in the preceding months. So just wanted to put it out there for tonight and just get your sentiment and whether or not to pursue it. And the likelihood that we would come back with the first step would be in July. We would be able to pivot that quick because this is a pretty straightforward ordinance element to change.
So would that prohibit the ice cream man and the food trucks to?
It's based off the
conduct it?
definitions, yeah.
So we could exempt them.
Yeah. Correct, yeah, if you would, public.
I would like to make a comment about the solicitation.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks ago, my son was home and someone knocked on the door and said that they were replacing roofs and that there was a shingle missing on my roof. The roof was replaced about 3 years ago. I went out and looked, there's no shingle missing. So it was the old, he left a note for me call me, will,
Yeah.
that's hardly what I consider a legitimate call.
It's
So
essentially
if
un-
anybody is in
yeah.
favor of eliminating door-to-door solicitation, add me to that list.
You do get reports of predatory type style sales practices, and of
Thanks,
course, if
Don.
you have people who are susceptible to that, that's another element. It's tough to track the impact of that, but that it's a part of it.
That actually literally happened to me 2 years ago. I had left for 4th of July vacation and my partner was at home and a green pest, actually he left, but green pest management came and essentially badgered her into signing a contract. I had to like immediately call them and tell them no, absolutely not. So.
So
Control were big.
this would just allow for full-throated enforcement by the police department to remove them from the area. So, and there would be no conflict of interest because they have a permit that they had from the township to do it.
Robert?
Interested in Steve's comment because he went on the food trucks. So were you thinking of the food trucks also, or were you just keeping it as a no solicitation ordinance?
So door to door, no solicitation.
Okay.
I think your food trucks, your ice cream trucks,
Yeah.
different things like that that are stay in the
Permissible.
street, permissible.
Okay.
They're not as much of a problem as the guy that won't leave till you sign on the dotted line.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to clarify that there wasn't
Yeah.
two
Okay.
issues.
If that's doable, I would be in agreement.
We'll bring this back in the future.
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
But this just basically says move forward with the process to review it. So
I just didn't know if, Winnie, off the top of your head, if you had seen any case law where commercial free speech has been given more leeway if now they would, or anyone would sue us about, the government is restricting free speech now that money equals free speech?
Well, before that.
Yeah.
As I said, I really never liked to give the opposition ammunition, but there are some constitutional issues with 100% restriction. I haven't looked at the research for a while, but I have done it before, and it is a question. An absolute ban is
Right.
a problem, I think, but
Yep.
we can work on it, and make it better.
Perfect.
That's the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
we still have two more.
2 more. Ed,
I
Greg?
thought you were done.
Oh,
Second.
so- Of course, when we get to the budget
Yeah.
discussion, this is the, one of the actually primary ones I wanted to get in front of the board tonight too, so. Cycle never stops. All right. So we did this last year as kind of a precursory measure for having board inputs to identify priorities that we can then sort out as a staff when we go do our preliminary planning for the budget cycle, which for us officially kind of starts in the late July timeframe when we do the planning. Of course, we come forward with the state of the township update to just kind of provide some clarifications on what's happening. And then, of course, the actual reviews commencing in September and October. But with that, last year was the first time we actually identified priorities based off of our comprehensive plan that got tiered voting by the board members to identify, we'll call them like the top of mind stuff, kind of still a priority, but not at the top of the list, and then get to it if we have the kind of like more discretionary types of initiatives as well. So that's what tonight is for, is essentially kind of to update that list of priorities. It might not change. It might, just based off of how applicable we've been over the course of the last 12 months. Of course, the priorities we're identifying today, we're still midpoint in 25, implementing a few of them. But that's essentially just to get input from the board and then bring it back. And then with that, we would meld the kind of board priorities with community inputs through the survey. And that's to build more of like a, staff recommendations, you got your board priorities and your community impact, community inputs. So now you have kind of the full ecosystem of budget priorities, and that helps really develop, like, I'll call them like a more comprehensively planned budget when you get all the details and inputs. So this is just an overview for the upcoming budget cycle. This was done, I think, when we sorted out the calendar for it towards the end of last year. But with that, just these are the dates that we're going to be doing. We're going to be more, I'll call them aggressive in the month of September to get multiple budget. These are off-night work sessions, so they're kind of on the Mondays in between public meetings, to be able to get more flexibility for doing workshops towards the end of October. And if not, before the October 20th meeting, because then we can be able to motion to advertise at the October 20th meeting to approve it in November and not go all the way up until the month of December if there's still some things to be done. So this is just trying to pull some of the end parts to the, pull them back to the left on the process. So any questions about this? This is just the calendar of events. Great. So with that, everything ties back to the comprehensive plan 2018 wise. Of course, we already went through kind of the explanation of how we sorted out all these details, but it's taking comp plan priorities, taking your priorities from last year and kind of building them into tiers, kind of stacked up in kind of categorical alignment, and then making sure that when we're talking about funding that's through our general fund that goes towards transportation type initiatives, you know, it's kind of, you know, how much do we need to increase it or decrease it by? So it's like that kind of granular level of detail as it's kind of fleshed all the way out. So this was just last year's priorities. And we've gone over this pretty ad nauseum every time we do a budget brief and updates on the performance of our budget as well. So with that, I just wanted to provide some updates and just kind of where we're at right now with the existing priorities. So one of the things that we identified for strong financial management, that was more kind of an evergreen type approach. That was just, we wanted to make sure that we were continuing to be in a solvent position based off of some of the things that we had to correct from prior years. And that was during the 24 budget planning cycle in 2023, when we had the incremental increase kind of approach to things to kind of catch up based off of like a completely deferred, I'll call them structural deficit that was incurred by the township. And then of course with that, it was one where kind of melding these two together, just activating for projects that have been kind of left out there due to a holistic amount of reasons. But that was seen as an immediate infusion should they become active developments within the next few years based off of projects that were planned and approved several years ago as projected implementations that we could then tie to future budget increase endeavors based off of what we needed those increases for, which in this case is primarily for transfers to capital. We know that, you know, we have a strong approach to improving infrastructure in the township. It's just underfunded in the long run. So we will need to basically replenish our capital reserve position at some point. The only way we can achieve that is by increasing general fund revenues back into the capital fund. And we've been trying to like squeeze that date to the right as long as possible. But at some point, we're going to have to commit to a time frame where it's either increase the revenues, or if we don't have them, decrease the capital budget. So that's a decision point that's still on the table because we haven't solved for yet. Good news is these are now active projects. They weren't when we were talking about this. So these projects, I don't know when their final build out dates will be. Bancroft, I believe, is going to be faster than the Thompson Road property one, just based off of the type of home being sold. $1 million home versus like a $400,000 or $500,000 townhouse. They're probably going to go quicker, even though there's twice as many. But I think that's within the next year. So we can probably expect the Bancroft project to have sales completed probably somewhere by the end of FY26. So into 27, 28's revenues. Thompson will just be as they project out, but those are larger sales. So those revenues, when they do come in based off of individual unit sales, will be stronger, if that makes sense. Economic development, we're in the middle of one. It's kind of that foundational base resetting for allowances of the different type of constructs of form-based zoning through different areas in the township. So it's very much part of an ongoing public process that we're nearing completion. We wanted to also start to tie in larger regional kind of groups into understanding local economic priorities for the township. So we have had some discussions with some of our members and counterparts in Kennett, very exploratory in nature, nothing really permanent, nothing really building out from that yet. But the good note is everybody has kind of the same sentiment. Everyone's trying to figure out how they want to condition themselves for stronger approach to economic development. And just nobody has the internal means to kind of go it alone. It's also one where if you think about it at a township level, it's tough to like justify having a full economic development authority and staff and stuff. And maybe it's more of a regional function. So it's another one of those kind of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania type functions is we're as municipalities stronger as the sum of all of our parts more so than not. So that's being explored. Just wanted to let you know that that's part of an ongoing discussion because it takes multiple people to agree to a solution before you can enact it. Infrastructure improvements, I've already mentioned the big one, Hillendale Road, so that's ongoing. We still have to replace our own generator. I think implementation of that is actually the beginning of July. That's just because our own town hall generator doesn't really even work. So that's a big one for us. That just allows us to be more resilient as like an operating center and to not stay at home when the power goes out. Stormwater, this is another significant one. So we actually did the release of communication on it, I think a week ago or so. But the Smedley Preserve Stormwater Project it's being built as we speak. So it should be complete by October timeframe. To refresh everyone's memories, that is the mile-long of linear stream that's essentially going through sediment reduction BMP for a project that was commissioned long time ago. We finally got it active and finally got it active on a public site that does a dramatic improvement to the area as well, and specifically in the White Clay watershed. So that'll be an exciting project to track as we go along. It's a significant lift. And had we had to go it alone to do the project at that site, it probably would have been $4 or $5 million to the township easy. Just know that that is a primarily PennDOT and Turnpike funded project, and our ARPA match was solely for our percentage of it. So we get all the gains and none of the real financial risk there, which is great. And it's also one where I do believe that the pivot to the DEP permit for future volume control that's coming down in a few years, that this would have some significance of a potential to like jump to the next permit as well. So it's like extra important to get it done. But that's just going down the road for the stormwater. So that's a big infrastructure improvement. And then just, we already talked about it tonight, completion of Act 209 and what that does to empower our own ability to address intersections and transportation initiatives in the township. I can't speak to that enough. And I think it's one where it was clarified better than I did it. You know, the scale of that revenue won't be able to meet the $60 million price tag when you add everything up. But for those PennDOT funded type projects, it can, especially when you commission it with other kind of inputs, stack up for local grant matches to help get those projects up off the ground. The rising cost of public safety services, you know, we're still trying to have discussions regionally with our kind of, I'll call them public safety counterparts. The one that we actually have going, which is, it's been announced multiple times, is I don't know if it's getting the traction that's getting, but there are continuing to merge Avondale and West Grove fire companies. So that process is ongoing. And I believe that we're going to seek a solution to have a fully merged solution by the start of FY27. I think 26 is kind of the float year. So we'll be a joint fire company during that time frame, at least as it's projected today to do so. So right now the stations are coming together with their kind of cohesive operating plans, kind of internal committees to explore kind of what it looks like operationally, how they kind of mount and man apparatus in the area. And then for the municipalities, it's more about governance, enactment of governance and controls over how you allocate funding, how you make decisions to essentially provide accountability back to the townships and borough municipalities that are part of that established, I don't even know what it's going to be called yet, consolidated station, if that makes sense. In terms of organizational excellence, we tried to kind of tweak some technology enhancements, primarily just to make service providing a little bit easier or better to like report and engage with the township. So that was the primary one. We did kind of scrap our community development ERP right now, just because we're able to better tweak our existing system. So that is a good cost savings measure where we're able to get our provider to like help onboard newer solutions. They're kind of using the township as a guinea pig for some of them as well, but at least that was helpful. Apparently, when you tell somebody that you might break up with them because they're not good, they're not giving you the software that you need, they're going to jump up and say, well, what can we do to better our system? So that's kind of what we did. So using that as leverage to get non like at the township cost expense improvements to your operating system is a good outcome there. So with that, you can read some of the other elements there for organizational kind of improvements as well. But enhancement of community services, it's going to be really helpful when we get feedback from the community to figure out where we can enhance. So it's kind of pending feedback, but that's part of why we did that project in the first place. Can't enhance, no, unless you get the feedback from people telling you where you need to focus. Now, whether or not those inputs will be helpful, that's wait and see. So we just need to wait for the feedback to come to us. So I'm not going to provide any commentary until those comments come back to the township. And with that, we actually have been enhancing scale to community events at the park. I believe community planning actually started already. So we're ongoing with that. And the goal is always to go, same thing with the airport when the flying, the air show is just always see how we can go bigger and better to just get that attraction to the township and, have people recognize us that we're a good place to have kind of family events in New Garden. And in terms of an open space program, it wasn't less on the acquisition side. It was more heavy emphasis on the implementation side based off of prior acquisitions. And so that went forward. We've already secured one grant. We're waiting for finalization of the other grants that are going to be more in the September, October timeframe that are really going to kind of meet the scaled cost for implementing, at least in this case, the Smedley Preserve project. The one delta would be, if you remember, the project was kind of built into two phases. One was like access improvements. One was like restoration of the actual like greenscape, if you will. A lot of the reforestation projects, part of the project. That was kind of still important, but not priority for getting access to the site and of itself. So the good news is if we get these grants, which we've been successful thus far, so there's no reason to assume that we're not going to be successful, maybe not fully successful, but successful nonetheless, gets us to within about 1.3 million, 1 million. And really the biggest project cost in that project is the restoration of the sidewalk path anyway. So it's one where like, can we live with the existing golf cart path for a while? Yeah, so we'll probably do that. So that's a good outcome. That's a good thing. I'm trying to pump us up. We did a good job this year. So I'm trying to tell my staff and everything else. I talked about grow and expand New Garden Field just for a little bit, but one is if you remember or have ever seen the airport master plan, it kind of sprawls out like a campus, kind of, if you know where the EAA existing facility is and kind of down the topography there, it's always funny when you look at it because on a plan view, it's like, this looks great. We can put everything. And then you go on the airport site, it's essentially like an undulating kind of ski slope all the way down to the bottom of the hill. So with that, that just means that building out in that area is one where you need a heavy amount of interest and support from the Bureau of Aviation because you just have to put a lot of dirt into the area to like level everything out and grade it to where it can support additive hangaring facilities, or you want to have secondary businesses co-located to your airport. Nothing's going to get solved there until you get the infrastructure improved upon. And that's based off of who can help support that initiative. Are you more likely to get heavy state subsidy if it's going to be an aviation interest there? In this case, yes, because of our federal feeder status. So like I said, trying to compound all these things together, keeping us in a strong position as a federal feeder can help get the airport developed for economic development initiatives. So we're going through those discussions right now and just trying to come up with a feasibility and analysis of what can go there, how much of it can go there, and who would be located to that area, if that makes sense. Very preliminary, nothing in writing yet. It's just, like I said, these discussions have started. And then just improve energy efficiency. We actually completed our commercial energy audit. Essentially, this entire place is an energy sieve because of all the window panes. So with that, in the summer, it bleeds AC out, and in the winter, it bleeds heat out as well. So we've at least been given the roadmap to how to improve that. The goal is to use that analysis to then seek grant subsidized public facility improvement programs that can subsidize, replacement, maybe get double pane windows, maybe get some, and then there's some like low hanging fruit measures that you can do as well, but you can make a trip to Lowe's or Home Depot to get stuff like that as well too. So all that's to say, in order to do that, it's not part of our current facilities budget. So we're going to itemize out some of those projects and flesh them into potentially for next year, just to like help, keep town hall in good condition as an obligated function of what we do. So any questions about 25 and priorities? Essentially right now would just be, and you don't need to give all the inputs right now if you can't think of them off the top of your head. I'm just trying to realize the time of day right now as well. Everyone's thinking budgeting. But just to get those inputs back to me about your priorities, where you'd like to see other things addressed. And of course, this is, I want to emphasize, things that we can control. So there's other things around there, the more macro perspective that it sounds great, but we have no precedent as a second-class township to pursue in of itself. But with that, any preliminary comments? Just keep doing what we're doing. Roll it over, give things a chance to permeate. Okay, all right. I do think the recommendations will probably identify, if you can't think of anything, by the community survey, if they identify something else, and we'll provide those updates when provided. That was a terrible sentence. All right. The last measure I have for the manager report is pretty straightforward. It's more of just like a kind of an update. So the blood bank of Delmarva approached the township based off of a prior interaction to do a more consistent blood drive here at Town Hall. So right now we only have one a year. It's with the American Red Cross. Of course, that goes to the American Red Cross. The blood bank of Delmarva would be 6 times a year. They want to do it on a bi-monthly basis right out of here. And they have a lot of local contracts. So they have their blood carried by Southern Chester County EMS. They work with Christiana campuses, Penn Medicine campuses. So the kind of narrative is like the township's support of that would put it into resources that provide direct ambulatory service right here in the township. So it's a good program, I believe. And we'll have more understandings of what they need to do something like that with more consistency. I'll call it like more permanency, if you will, if we can get it going. But it's just get your feedback of whether or not you would support something like that. I can't imagine it would be, otherwise we probably wouldn't have brought it up, but just anything else with that. But that was just more of an update.
Yep. Yeah, Medic 94, which is Southern Chester County Emergency, we've used 17 times where they've actually given blood on a medical emergency. And that's across 17 municipalities here locally.
And their ability to carry it now on the actual
Correct.
apparatus.
On the medical
helpful
unit.
too, so.
Yeah.
So it wasn't enough for Delaware to steal our water, now they want our blood?
Yep.
Well, in all nuance, it's the blood bank of Delmarva, so it's 3.
Well, I don't like
Right.
either state, so.
What's that? That's true. Delmarva, I don't know what they would
Delmarva.
call it now, technically, yes.
Delaware used to be.
Delaware's just lower Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's true.
they were out celebrating secession day over the
We'll
weekend.
do
punks.
Maryland ARC, a boundary line dispute, test the historical accuracy of it. That's all I had for manager report time. If there's anything else, let me know, but thank you.
Any comment from the board before we adjourn? David, any community announcements?
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?